In a tiny workshop glowing with warm candlelight, old Geppetto carved his newest wooden puppet. His hands trembled from age, but his heart danced with joy as the wooden boy slowly took shape. "Pinocchio," he whispered proudly, brushing wood shavings from the puppet's cheeks. As night settled, Geppetto placed Pinocchio gently on his work table and gazed at him with fatherly longing. "If only you were a real boy, I would never be lonely again." The wind outside lifted slightly, as if listening to his wish. Geppetto blew out the candle and went to sleep, unaware that a soft shimmer of stardust was beginning to fill the room. A bright light appeared near the window, the blue fairy. She smiled kindly at the wooden puppet. "A heart may start in wood," she whispered, "but it can grow into something real." Her wand touched Pinocchio's chest, and suddenly the puppet blinked, stretched his wooden limbs, and gasped his very first breath. "Hello!" Pinocchio said with innocent excitement, his voice echoing through the quiet workshop. The blue fairy gave him one task: prove yourself brave, honest, and unselfish, and you may become real. With that, she vanished. Moments later, Geppetto awoke to the sound of small wooden footsteps. He froze, then shouted with joy, lifting Pinocchio off the ground and spinning him around. For the first time in years, the old workshop felt truly alive. Morning arrived, and Geppetto proudly prepared Pinocchio for his first day of school. Pinocchio marched excitedly down the street with his new book, whistling happily and waving at birds that swooped around him. Jiminy Cricket hopped beside him, acting as his guide. "Listen to your conscience, kid. That's me." Pinocchio nodded, but the world outside was full of distractions. Just before reaching the school, two sly figures appeared, Honest John and Gideon. With their polished hats and charming grins, they circled Pinocchio like hungry foxes around a hen. "A wooden child? Why, you belong on stage," Honest John declared. Before Jiminy Cricket could stop them, Pinocchio was swept away by their promises of fame, songs, and the glamorous life of a celebrity. They led him down twisting streets and into a giant theater shaped like a laughing mask. Pinocchio's schoolbook fell behind on the road, forgotten. Inside the grand theater, the famous puppet master Stromboli twirled his mustache and clapped his hands with delight. "A puppet with no strings? Ho ho, you will make me rich!" He shoved Pinocchio onto a huge stage decorated with bright lights and booming drums. At first, Pinocchio loved it. Crowds cheered wildly as he danced, flipped, and sang, "I've got no strings." Coins showered across the stage. Pinocchio felt like the most important boy in the world. But once the show ended, Stromboli locked Pinocchio inside a wooden cage. "You're staying with me forever," Stromboli growled, carrying the cage into his wagon. Pinocchio sobbed, tugging at the bars, realizing the terrible mistake he'd made. Jiminy Cricket finally found him and tried to break the lock, but nothing worked. Pinocchio felt hopeless, until the wagon filled with a soft blue glow. The blue fairy appeared, asking gently, "Why weren't you at school?" Pinocchio panicked and lied. His nose grew longer, 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 until he sneezed from the weight of it. Realizing his mistake, he confessed the truth. The blue fairy freed him from the cage. "Remember," she said, "a lie grows and grows." Jiminy Cricket grabbed his hand. "Come on, kid, let's get you home." On the way home, Pinocchio and Jiminy ran into a coach filled with laughing boys. The coachman smiled crookedly. "Free rides to Pleasure Island. All fun, no rules." Pinocchio hesitated, then jumped aboard. The island was a loud carnival filled with games, candy mountains, and firecracker shows. Children broke everything in sight, shouted, painted walls, and caused chaos. No adults, no rules, just wild fun. Pinocchio joined the excitement with a boy named Lampwick. They played pool, threw pies, and laughed until their stomachs hurt. But as midnight approached, strange creaking sounds echoed through the carnival. Lampwick suddenly grabbed his throat, his voice cracking. "Hey, what's happening to me?" To Pinocchio's horror, Lampwick began turning into a donkey, ears, tail, hooves, everything. Children all around transformed too, braying in fear as shadowy workers dragged them away. Pinocchio sprouted ears and a tail, but escaped with Jiminy's help, stumbling onto a raft and paddling desperately away from the cursed island. Pinocchio returned home in tears, wooden legs trembling, but Geppetto and the workshop were gone. Only a letter remained, saying that Geppetto had gone searching for Pinocchio and was swallowed by a giant sea monster, Monstro the whale. Without hesitation, Pinocchio rushed to the shore, dove into the roaring ocean, and swam harder than he had ever moved in his life. Waves crashed, storms rolled, and shadows swirled beneath him. Suddenly, a massive mouth opened beneath the waves. Monstro swallowed him whole. Inside the whale's belly, glowing with drifting lanternfish, Pinocchio spotted Geppetto sitting in a little boat. The reunion filled the enormous cavern with warmth and relief. Geppetto hugged him, whispering, "My boy, you came for me." Together, and with Jiminy's plan, they lit a fire to make Monstro sneeze them out. The whale thrashed and blasted them across the water in a spray of foam and smoke. They washed ashore on a quiet beach. Geppetto lay unconscious from exhaustion. Pinocchio tried shaking him, calling his name, but there was no response. A soft sadness filled the air as Pinocchio curled beside him, whispering, "Please don't leave me. I want to be real, to be your son." The blue fairy's magic shone down one last time. She touched Pinocchio's wooden chest. The wood softened. Warmth grew. Pinocchio gasped as he felt his first real heartbeat. Geppetto opened his eyes to find a living, breathing boy smiling back at him. Tears filled his eyes as he lifted Pinocchio into his arms. They walked home together, hearts full, knowing they had earned their miracle through courage, honesty, and love. In the workshop, Jiminy Cricket received a shining gold badge for guiding Pinocchio, who now lived not as a puppet, but as a real boy, happy, brave, and free.